Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the liquidity parameters discussion that's been happening. There's a part one and the part two. While the foundation engineering team has been focused on the Solidity implementation of the RAM, the R&D and community teams have been working with the community to discuss and signal support for the different parameters within the RAM. On the next slide, I'll kind of go over and talk a little bit about the different phases that we've gone through so far. So we started in July with the RAM education guide and asked members for any questions ahead of that first liquidity parameter discussion. During that education phase, Ray and I held office hours, answered questions on Discord and the forum to ensure that everybody had a solid understanding of how the RAM works and how the parameters would impact the RAM. And then in mid-August, we started part one of the liquidity parameter discussion where we asked members 3 core questions. The first question being, what is the amount of NXM or ETH that should be able to be redeemed and exit in the short term at a price close to book value? Question 2 is, over what time frame should this NXM be redeemed, that being the initial exit period? And then question 3, in the long term, how long should it take to get down to the minimum capital requirement based on the current cover amount, assuming everyone exits at maximum speed? So during the part one discussion, we talked about those questions. Members shared their opinions on what the potential answers should be. Those were collected and put into a variety of snapshot signaling votes. After that part one discussion wrapped up, the 3 snapshot signaling votes were held to gauge member support for the proposed answers to these questions. I'll review the outcome of that shortly here on the next slide. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about the part 2 discussion, which is going to start this week. So with the initial forum post going up sometime later today, the part 2 discussions will begin. During part 2, our goal will be to determine how the parameters needed to achieve the outcomes that members signal support for in the part 1 discussion. In part 2, we'll go through and outline those parameters, but you can actually find those in the overview post, which you can find in the community calls resource guide that I posted earlier today as well. So very similar to the part 1 structure, we'll have a discussion for a week, and then we'll have those snapshot signaling votes. In this case, it's just going to be one signaling vote where people will choose the parameter package that they think best represents the parameters we need to achieve the outcomes that were signaled in part 1. Ray is also going to put some analysis and simulations on the forum to give members greater insight on what these potential parameters will look like and how they'll impact the RAM. So again, we'll review those parameters, analyze R&D simulation and modeling of different potential parameters, how they impact the RAM, and then share our respective thoughts on the parameters that can help members achieve the voting results from part 1. So looking forward to kicking off part 2. Of course, we're still going to have the third part, which is talking about the Oracle buffer and some of those other parameters, but those I think will be a little bit more technical in nature. Part 1 and part 2 so far in this discussion have been the ones that members have been most focused on and most eager to participate in.